Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. From the Galactic Archives, third millennium of the cosmic era. In the distant reaches of Galactic Sector 69, known throughout civilized space as the orbital zoo for egotistical gods, there exist beings whose pride rivals the luminosity of supernovas. Each planetary system houses species who believe themselves superior by virtue of their unique gifts, telepathy, regeneration, or appendages numbering beyond reason. Yet among these self-proclaimed deities, none command both fear and desire like the Loendarians. Their legend preceded them across star systems. Violet-skinned warrior women with combat skills matched only by their breathtaking beauty. Their eyes, luminous green pools that promised both paradise and peril, could hypnotize opponents seconds before delivering death blows. The Loendarian sacred code, etched in the crystalline halls of their homeworld, contained one immutable law that defined their existence. I shall submit only to one who proves worthy in combat. This was not metaphor nor romantic conceit. A Loendarian warrior would sooner end her own life than serve an unworthy master. For millennia, would-be conquerors and lovesick fools alike found themselves broken upon the altar of Loendarian combat prowess. It is written that the greatest of their kind, the royal bloodline, possessed strength to redirect asteroid paths with bare hands and wisdom to outsmart quantum computers. They were living weapons, perfected through selective breeding and rigorous training, beautiful and deadly as the twin black holes at the sector's center. Only once in recorded history had a Loendarian princess been defeated in fair combat. The victor vanished from historical records, but whispers spoke of a child born with powers that reshaped galactic borders. Tim Lancaster's head pounded with the fury of a malfunctioning thruster engine. The aftermath of his Zorgian friend's birthday celebration, 7 straight hours of something called quantum tequila, left his mouth tasting like a combination of battery acid and old socks. "Never again," he mumbled, shuffling through the crowded promenade of Outpost X-17, an ancient space station at the edge of civilized space. His bloodshot eyes remained fixed on the holographic comic projected from his wrist device, the latest issue of the Caldwell Family Adventures. "Ha! Classic Serafina Caldwell," Tim chuckled despite his hangover, admiring how the fictional heroine had just transformed a simple transmission relay into a device capable of disabling an entire battlecruiser. The Caldwells were his obsession, a legendary family of artifact creators, not merely hunters, whose inventions had shaped wars, rewritten natural laws, and occasionally cracked the very fabric of reality. Their name was synonymous with power and unpredictability. A thunderous roar erupted from nearby, drawing Tim's attention despite his determination to finish the comic's climactic scene. A massive crowd had gathered around what appeared to be an ancient arena, all gleaming metallic curves with energy fields shimmering overhead. "What's all this garbage?" Tim muttered, but curiosity pulled him forward. He elbowed his way through a collection of beings that represented at least 17 different species by his count. In the center of the arena stood the largest Kronthian warrior Tim had ever seen, 8 feet of muscle, scales, and bad attitude, lying unconscious with a shattered jaw. Standing over him, barely breaking a sweat, was a sight that momentarily cleared Tim's hangover fog. She stood approximately 6 feet tall, her violet skin gleaming under the arena lights. Her body was a perfect blend of athletic prowess and feminine curves, wrapped in what could only be described as battle lingerie, functional armor that somehow managed to highlight rather than hide her physique. But it was her eyes that captured Tim's attention, vibrant green, intense, and utterly inhuman in their beauty. "Is there no one else?" Her voice rang out, a melodic contralto that somehow carried authority despite its softness. Will no champion step forward to challenge Arya de Lonhel, Royal Guard Captain of the Loendarian Empire? The crowd fell silent. The unconscious Kronthian had been their best hope, apparently. Tim, still engrossed in his comic, snorted loudly at a particularly amusing panel where Derek Caldwell accidentally activated an ancient toilet that created a time paradox. "You dare laugh at my challenge?" Arya's voice cut through the silence, her green eyes locking onto Tim. Tim looked up, confused. "Huh? No, I was laughing at this." He waved his hollow comic, where Derek basically creates "A challenger appears," boomed an automated announcer system, its translation matrix converting Tim's words into something entirely different. "Wait, what? No, I'm not," Tim protested, but security drones were already herding him toward the arena entrance. The crowd erupted in cheers, apparently thrilled that another victim had volunteered for slaughter. "Son of a bitch," Tim muttered, stumbling into the arena. "I was just trying to read my comic in peace." Arya assessed him with cold precision. "You? A human? This is who challenges the undefeated champion of Loendaria?" Tim squinted at her, finally taking in the full situation. Even through his hangover haze, he could appreciate how absolutely stunning she was, like someone had taken every heterosexual male fantasy and given it combat training. "Look, Princess," Tim said, still not shutting off his comic, "there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not challenging anyone. I'm just a mechanic with a hangover trying to find out if Serafina Caldwell manages to reverse the polarity of the neutron flow before her brother gets digested by the transdimensional slug." Arya's perfect eyebrows furrowed. "You mock the sacred combat ritual with your inattention?" She stalked toward him, her movements as fluid as quicksilver. "I am Arya de Lonhel, firstborn of the High Matriarch. I have slain 3,000 challengers and taken no master." Tim finally looked up from his comic, his eyes inadvertently dropping to her impressive chest before meeting her gaze. "That's quite a resume. I'm Tim. I fix broken stuff on ships and occasionally drink too much with aliens who don't understand human alcohol tolerance." "Prepare yourself, Tim who fixes broken things," Arya snarled, drawing dual energy blades from sheaths at her thighs. "By Loendarian law, I must accept all challenges. Your defeat will be swift but honorable." Tim sighed, finally switching off his comic. "Listen, Violet, I really don't want to—" He barely ducked in time as an energy blade sliced through the air where his head had been. "Jesus! Okay. What happened next surprised even Tim. Years of bar fights, back-alley deals gone wrong, and avoiding debt collectors had given him reflexes that defied his current intoxicated state. He rolled sideways, scooping up a fragment of bone, presumably from the Kronthian's earlier defeat, and came up in a defensive stance. Arya attacked with lethal precision, her blades creating an impenetrable web of energy. Yet somehow, without seeming to fully focus on the fight, Tim evaded each strike. He continued to glance at his now closed holo projector, as if more concerned about the comic's cliffhanger than the deadly warrior attempting to separate his head from his shoulders. "Stand still and die with dignity," Arya demanded, growing increasingly frustrated. "Nah, I'm good," Tim replied, casually flipping the bone fragment in his hand. "Hey, quick question. In your culture, is there like a timeout option or a just kidding rule we could invoke?" She responded with a flying kick that should have connected with his chest. Instead, Tim sidestepped at the last possible moment, causing Arya to crash into a control panel at the arena's edge. Warning lights flashed. The ancient system's voice echoed. "Anomaly detected. Emergency protocol activated." A gravity wave rippled through the arena, knocking both combatants off their feet. Tim found himself airborne, tumbling toward Arya, who was similarly suspended. In pure reflex, he flicked the bone fragment in his hand. a casual, almost absent-minded gesture. The fragment struck Arya directly between her eyes, causing her to blink in surprise. At that exact moment, the gravity field reversed, slamming both of them to the floor. Tim landed awkwardly but on his feet. Arya, momentarily disoriented by the bone fragment, stumbled and fell to one knee. The arena fell silent. The automated system chimed. Combat concluded. Challenger victorious. Tim blinked. Wait, what? Arya's face registered shock, then disbelief, followed by what appeared to be existential horror. Impossible, she whispered. Her energy blades deactivated automatically as she stared at Tim with those mesmerizing green eyes. Look, this was clearly some kind of mistake, Tim began, but was interrupted as Arya gracefully rose and approached him. To the crowd's astonishment, she knelt before him, head bowed. By ancient law and sacred honor, I, Arya de Lonhel of the royal bloodline, pledge my service and obedience to you, my conqueror. Your will shall be my command until death releases me from this bond. The arena erupted in chaos. Species from across the galaxy shouted, gasped, or made whatever noise constituted shock in their respective biologies. That's really not necessary, Tim stammered. How about we just call it a draw and go our separate ways? Before Arya could respond, the control panel she had crashed into earlier began to spark violently. A beam of pure energy shot out, engulfing both of them in a blinding light. Tim felt a searing pain at the base of his spine, like someone had inserted a white-hot poker directly into his vertebrae. When the light faded, he found himself still standing, with Arya looking at him in a decidedly different way. Her eyes had changed, still green but now with a luminous quality that hadn't been there before, and her expression, where there had been duty and resignation, there now appeared to be something much more primal. The binding ritual, she whispered, her voice suddenly husky. It is complete. We are now joined by more than law, by ancient magic and quantum entanglement. She rose to her feet, moving toward Tim with a decidedly different kind of purpose. My master, she purred, the title clearly holding new meaning. Okay, Tim said, backing up slightly. I think something weird just happened with that machine and we should probably get someone to look at that before. Take me to your dwelling, Arya commanded, though technically she was the one who had pledged obedience. I must serve you properly. Tim looked around at the still shocked crowd, then back at the warrior princess who was now looking at him like he was a dessert after a month-long fast. My quarters? They're kind of a mess, and I haven't really had time to... She seized his hand, placing it against her collarbone. Feel, she instructed. Beneath his fingers, Tim felt a rapid, almost hummingbird-like pulse. Your heart is racing, he observed. The binding creates needs, she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. Needs that must be satisfied. Now. Tim swallowed hard. His hangover had miraculously vanished, replaced by an entirely different kind of lightheadedness. Well, I guess the comic can wait. Tim awoke the next morning feeling like he'd been simultaneously hit by a transport ship and given the most exquisite massage in the galaxy. Every muscle ached in the most satisfying way possible. His memories of the previous night were fragmented but intense. Violet skin against his, strength that could crush him being used instead to draw pleasure from his body, green eyes glowing in the darkness of his quarters. This can't be real, he muttered, reaching for the bottle of hydration fluid he kept by his bed. Your thirst requires attention, master. Tim nearly fell out of bed. Arya stood in the doorway to his tiny kitchen unit wearing nothing but one of his work shirts, which barely reached mid-thigh on her statuesque frame. In her hands was a steaming mug of what smelled suspiciously like actual earth coffee, a luxury nearly impossible to find this far into the frontier. How did you... Where did you get coffee? He stammered. She approached the bed with the same fluid grace she'd displayed in combat. I have many skills beyond warfare, she said, offering him the mug. Your will is my ritual, master, and now that we have strengthened our bond once, perhaps we should do so again, for reinforcement. As Tim reached for the mug, his movement caused a twinge at the base of his spine. Setting the coffee aside, he twisted to examine his back in the small mirror mounted on his wall. What he saw made him freeze. At the base of his spine glowed an intricate pattern, not a tattoo, but something that seemed to exist both on and beneath his skin. It pulsed with a soft, bluish light in time with his heartbeat. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, pointing at the marking. Arya smiled, setting the coffee aside and sliding onto the bed with predatory grace. "The artifact of binding," she explained, tracing her finger along the glowing pattern. At her touch, a wave of pleasure shot through Tim's body, making him gasp. "It connects us, deepens our bond, ensures my complete devotion." "This wasn't part of the deal," Tim protested weakly, even as Arya's proximity made thinking increasingly difficult. "There was no deal," she reminded him, her green eyes locked on his. "There was combat, there was victory, and now there is service." Her hand traced higher up his spine, sending another pulse of pleasure through him. "Would you like me to demonstrate the full range of my servitude again, master?" Tim Lancaster, mechanic, comic enthusiast, and now apparently master to a warrior princess from another world, found himself at a rare loss for words. Whatever strange twist of fate had brought him here, whatever cosmic joke had been played at his expense, seemed to be offering compensation beyond his wildest imagination. The rational part of his brain screamed that something was very wrong, that artifacts embedding themselves in spines was generally considered a medical emergency, not a romantic enhancement. But as Arya leaned in closer, every rational thought fled from his mind. "I think," he said carefully, "that we should definitely explore the parameters of this situation more thoroughly." Her smile was both promise and threat. "As you command, master." The urgent pounding at the door cut through Tim's post-coital haze like a plasma cutter through cheap hull plating. He groaned, burying his face deeper into the violet curve of Arya's neck. "Ignore it," he mumbled against her skin. "Probably just someone collecting for the station's air recycling charity again." Arya stiffened beneath him, her warrior instincts instantly alert. "Those are Loendarian war rhythms," she whispered, pushing him aside with effortless strength. "The Royal Elite Guard. They've come for me." Tim propped himself up on one elbow, watching appreciatively as she rose naked from the bed. The artifact at the base of his spine pulsed in response to her movement, sending a pleasant tingle up his vertebrae. "Let me guess, Daddy doesn't approve of your new boyfriend?" he quipped, reaching for his hollow comic projector. Arya's expression darkened as she began pulling on her battle gear. "This is no jest, Tim. By our laws, I am bound to you as your servant and—" She hesitated, a flush darkening her violet skin. "Companion. But my mother, the High Matriarch, will not recognize a combat victory she did not witness. The Royal Elite answers only to her." The pounding intensified. A female voice bellowed through the door. "Princess Arya de Lonhel. By order of Regent Tarsus and the High Council, you will return to the Loendarian flagship immediately." Tim's eyebrows shot up. "Regent? I thought your mother was in charge." "Tarsus?" Arya whispered, genuine fear flickering across her face. "He has no authority to—" The door shuddered under a concentrated energy blast. "Fine," Tim sighed, reluctantly setting his comic aside. "Let's deal with your angry relatives." Arya strapped on her final piece of armor, a breastplate that somehow managed to accentuate rather than conceal her perfect physique. Command me, master. I will eliminate these interruptions. Her hands moved to her dual energy blades. Tim stretched lazily, genuinely touched by her eagerness to murder her own people on his behalf. After the night we just had, I can't send a lady to do my dirty work. He winked at her bewildered expression. Besides, this'll wait. Go take a shower first. I've got this. But that's an order, princess, Tim said with unexpected firmness. Something in his tone made Arya's eyes widen with surprise, then darken with desire. She nodded once and retreated to the tiny bathroom unit. Once the shower activated, Tim glanced regretfully at his comic. The latest issue of The Caldwells and the Quantum Forge would have to wait. The things I do for a pretty face, he muttered, cracking his neck, and other outstanding attributes. He sauntered to the door, wearing nothing but wrinkled cargo pants, and punched the release code. The panel slid open to reveal 6 Loendarian warriors in full ceremonial battle armor, energy weapons humming with deadly potential. Their leader, a statuesque female with military cropped hair and a scar bisecting her left eye, looked him up and down with naked contempt. This, she sneered to her companions, this is the creature who supposedly defeated our princess? The warriors laughed, a musical sound at odds with their lethal appearance. I'm Tim, he offered with a lazy smile. Would have cleaned up the place if I'd known I was having company, but your princess has been keeping me occupied. The leader's face contorted with rage. You dare speak of her that way, human filth? She raised her blade, its edge crackling with energy. The combat was invalid. You are nothing but vermin who... Her strike came with blinding speed, aimed directly at Tim's neck. It should have decapitated him instantly. Instead, Tim tilted his head slightly to one side, the blade missing him by millimeters. The warrior's momentum carried her forward, off balance for just a fraction of a second. It was enough. Tim's open palm connected with her sternum, a seemingly casual tap that somehow sent her crashing into the corridor wall where she slumped, unconscious. The remaining warriors stared in shock before their training reasserted itself. They attacked as one, a synchronized wave of violet fury and gleaming weapons. Ladies, please, Tim sighed, disappointed. I haven't even had breakfast yet. He grabbed a mop from beside the door, an ancient model with a metal handle that he'd been meaning to replace, and twirled it once experimentally. What followed defied the warrior's comprehension. The seemingly hapless human moved with impossible speed and precision, the makeshift staff blocking, parrying, and striking with brutal efficiency. Within seconds, 5 elite Loendarian warriors lay groaning on the floor of the corridor. Tim knelt beside their leader, who was just regaining consciousness. He grasped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Gone was the lazy humor. His gaze burned with an intensity that sent an involuntary shiver of fear through the hardened warrior. "Sweetheart," he whispered, his face inches from hers. "You're ruining what was shaping up to be a really excellent morning with a truly extraordinary woman. I don't give a damn who you are or what your mission is, but if you disturb me again before I've had my coffee, I won't be this merciful. You have 60 seconds to disappear." He released her and stood up, casually tossing the mop aside. The leader scrambled to her feet, gathering her wounded pride along with her fallen comrades. This isn't over, human," she spat, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Tim had already turned away, the door sliding shut behind him. He picked up his hollow comic, chuckling at a panel where Seraphina Caldwell accidentally activated an artifact that turned her brother's hair into sentient tentacles. When Arya emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel barely adequate to its task, she found Tim lounging on the bed, seemingly absorbed in his comic as if the violent interruption had never occurred. "The elite guard?" she asked, scanning the room for signs of combat. Hmm? Oh, them? Tim set the comic aside, his eyes appreciatively following a droplet of water as it traced its way down her collarbone. We had a chat. They left. Arya's eyebrows rose in disbelief. You talked to the elite guard and they simply departed? I can be very persuasive. He grinned, pulling her down onto the bed and capturing her mouth in a kiss that seemed designed to make her forget her questions. It worked remarkably well. Later, as they lay tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, Arya propped herself on one elbow, studying his face with newfound curiosity. "I am pleased it was you who defeated me," she said softly. "There is something refreshing about your simplicity." Tim laughed. "Simple is good. The universe is complicated enough without me adding to it." She traced the outline of his jaw with one finger. "Yet I sense depths you do not reveal." Before he could respond, his communication unit buzzed with an urgent alert. The holographic display showed footage from the station's public areas, Loendarian ships docking in overwhelming numbers. "Well, crap," Tim muttered. "Looks like your family's not taking no for an answer." Aboard the Loendarian flagship Violet Vengeance, Tarsus slammed his fist into the ornate metal throne, denting the ancient alloy. The elite guard commander knelt before him, head bowed in shame. "Incompetent fools!" he snarled, his lean frame trembling with rage. "One human, one pathetic, insignificant human, and 6 elite warriors return in disgrace." Commander Hala didn't raise her eyes. "Forgive me, Regent. He was unexpected." Tarsus seized her face, his fingers digging into her cheeks as he forced her to look at him. "Nothing is unexpected when it comes to humans. They are insects. Vermin." "Yes, Regent," she whispered, eyes downcast. His grip softened, becoming a caress. "You've disappointed me, Hala." "I will make amends," she promised, sliding onto his lap with practiced ease. "Allow me to demonstrate my contrition." Tarsus claimed her mouth in a bruising kiss, his hands gripping her with possessive force. When he finally released her, his eyes gleamed with malevolence rather than desire. 20 years, he said, his voice low and dangerous. 20 years I've waited, watching her, planning. Since we were children, I knew Arya would be mine. His fingers tightened painfully around Hala's wrist. I was there for her when no one else was. I protected her, advised her, stood in her shadow while she basked in the adoration of our people. Hala knew better than to interrupt his familiar rant. "The High Matriarch practically handed her to me," he continued. "Everything was in place. Then this human appears from nowhere and ruins decades of careful manipulation." He shoved Hala from his lap, standing abruptly. "No more. If Arya won't be mine, she'll be no one's." He strode to the command console, activating the Galactic broadcast system. His message was brief and to the point. 1 billion credits for the human called Tim Lancaster, dead or alive. "Regent," Hala ventured cautiously, "such a sum is unprecedented. The entire sector will hunt him." Tarsus smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "Precisely. Let's see how long this Tim survives when every bounty hunter, mercenary, and glory seeker in the quadrant descends upon him." Tarsus smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "Precisely. Let's see how long this Tim survives when every bounty hunter, mercenary, and glory seeker in the quadrant descends upon him." On the opposite side of Outpost X-17, in the pleasure district known as the Violet Nebula, Tim Lancaster sprawled across a weathered synth-leather couch, one arm around Arya's shoulders, the other holding a fizzing neon drink that occasionally changed colors. The dive bar, Stellar Dregs, pulsed with the chaotic energy of a dozen different species trying to forget their problems through alcohol, gambling, and loud music. "So then," Tim continued his story, Derek Caldwell realizes he's been reading the artifact map upside down the entire time, and the treasure isn't in the quantum volcano. It's actually inside his own boot. Arya tilted her head, confusion written across her perfect features. This entertains you? Stories about fictional humans finding imaginary artifacts? Tim grinned, taking a long sip of his drink. It's not just entertainment, Princess. The Caldwells taught me everything I know about problem solving. Rule 17. When the obvious solution fails, try the ridiculous one. A three-armed Devorian bartender slid another round of drinks their way. On the house, he gurgled through his breathing apparatus. Not often we get celebrities. Tim raised an eyebrow. Celebrities? The bartender's compound eyes shifted nervously. Word travels fast in this station. The human who defeated the Loendarian princess? That's quality gossip. Great, Tim muttered. Just what we need. Attention. Arya straightened, her warrior instincts instantly alert. Perhaps we should relocate. My people will— Relax, Tim interrupted, pulling her closer. Nobody's going to make a move in Jorax's establishment, right, Jorax? He nodded toward the bartender. The Devorian bobbed his elongated head. Neutral territory. Station rules. Arya didn't appear convinced, but settled back against Tim's arm. You seem unusually familiar with the local protocols for a simple mechanic. Tim winked. I get around. His communicator beeped, drawing his attention. Ah, perfect timing. Zulg's second birthday party is starting in an hour. Second birthday? Arya's brow furrowed. Zorgians molt 12 times in their life cycle. Each molt gets a celebration. Tim knocked back the rest of his drink. We should make an appearance. Can't leave without saying goodbye properly. Leave? Alarm flashed across Arya's face. But my elite guard will still be looking for us tomorrow. Tim tapped her nose playfully. Tonight, we party. Besides, have you ever seen a Zorgian birthday? The cake has actual miniature supernovas. In the shadowy recesses of the Decapitator's Respite, a notorious mercenary hangout on the mining moon Kelthosmum 4, a holographic projection shimmered above the central table. Not a face but a name, Tim Lancaster. The letters pulsed in ominous crimson surrounded by encrypted bounty data. The assembled killers studied it with professional interest, exchanging glances that spoke of calculation and greed. 1 billion credits, growled Cracks the Disemboweler, his scarred face illuminated by the projection's blue glow. For this human? The information broker, a slight, nervous quintillion with translucent skin, nodded emphatically. Confirmed through official channels. The Loendarian regent wants him eliminated, or captured, preferably both somehow. Dresda, known throughout 3 systems as the Smiling Assassin, leaned forward. Her beautiful face betrayed no emotion as she studied the hologram. There must be more to him. No human commands this price. The broker shrugged. Details are scarce. Apparently defeated some Loendarian princess in combat. Now they want him dead. Cracks spat on the floor. Combat? Against Loendarians? Impossible. Impossible or not, Dresda murmured. 1 billion credits buys a lot of retirement. The mercenaries exchanged glances, calculations and betrayal already dancing behind their eyes. Each began plotting how to claim the bounty and eliminate any competition. Across the sector, on the gleaming utopian world of New Arcadia, General Maximus Thorne reviewed the same bounty notification on his private terminal. His office in the Galactic Peacekeeping Force headquarters overlooked crystal spires and immaculate gardens. Lancaster, he muttered, stroking his perfectly trimmed white beard. That name again. His aide, Lieutenant Voss, stood at attention nearby. Sir, are we accepting this contract? It violates 13 different GPF protocols to pursue a civilian without— I know the protocols, Lieutenant, Thorne snapped. But if this is the same Lancaster... He trailed off, lost in troubling memories. Sir? Thorne closed the file with a sharp gesture. Prepare my personal shuttle. Minimal crew, maximum armaments. But the Aldebaranian Peace Conference will have to wait. Thorne's expression hardened. Some threats transcend diplomatic niceties. The general rose from his desk, moving to a wall that appeared solid but responded to his touch by sliding open. Inside was a collection of artifacts, each labeled and secured behind energy fields. He removed a small device that resembled an ancient Earth compass. "What is that, sir?" Voss asked. "Lancaster Insurance," Thorne replied grimly. In the darkness of the void trenches, a region of space where light itself seemed to lose its way, a massive battleship floated in perpetual shadow. No official star charts marked its existence. No registry acknowledged its construction. Within its cavernous command center, surrounded by technology centuries beyond current galactic standards, the figure known only as Wraith received the bounty transmission. Its form, neither definitively male nor female, possibly not even entirely organic, remained motionless as data streamed directly into whatever passed for its consciousness. Tim Lancaster, it spoke, its voice a dissonant harmony of multiple tones. After all this time, subordinate entities waited silently for commands. "Set course for Outpost X-17, Wraith instructed. "Priority override. All systems." The vast ship began to move, reality distorting slightly around it. "Prepare the null chamber," Wraith continued. "This one will not escape again." 4 days passed in a blur of pleasure and discovery. Tim showed Arya the hidden wonders of Outpost X-17, the zero-gravity gardens where bioluminescent plants performed complex dances in the void, the temporal museum where visitors could glimpse 5 seconds into their own future, the infamous taste parlors where chefs created dishes that literally changed flavor with each bite. Despite Arya's concerns about pursuit, Tim maintained his carefree attitude, insisting they enjoy each moment. "Your indifference to danger is either impressive or insane," Arya remarked as they lounged in their rented suite, watching the binary stars set through the panoramic window. Tim, sprawled across the bed with his ever-present comic, grinned without looking up. "I prefer strategically unconcerned." Arya studied him with growing fascination. Each day revealed new contradictions. His combat prowess against her elite guard suggested extensive training, yet he claimed to be just a mechanic. His knowledge of obscure station protocols hinted at a checkered past, yet he appeared genuinely delighted by simple pleasures like synthetic ice cream and bad jokes. Most perplexing was the way hardened criminals and station security alike seemed to recognize him, then pretend they hadn't. "Tim," she ventured, moving to sit beside him on the bed, "who are you? Really?" He finally looked up from his comic, his eyes meeting hers with unusual seriousness. "Does it matter?" "It might, when Tarsus finds us." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "And he will find us." Tim covered her hand with his. "I'm just a guy who got lucky enough to catch the eye of the most beautiful warrior princess in the galaxy. The rest is background noise." The artifact at his spine pulsed, sending a wave of warmth through them both. Arya gasped softly as the sensation traveled along her arm where they touched. "The binding grows stronger," she whispered. Tim pulled her down beside him. "Good thing or bad thing?" "Unknown," she admitted. "The texts speak of deepening connections, shared thoughts, even synchronicity of souls." "Sounds serious," Tim murmured, his lips finding the sensitive spot at the base of her neck. "Tim, we should discuss." Her words dissolved into a sigh as his hands traced familiar paths across her body. "Later," he suggested, and for the moment, Arya found herself agreeing. On the seventh day, as Tim and Arya explored the station's infamous underground fighting pits, Arya entering 3 contests and winning them effortlessly while Tim made a small fortune betting on her, the first hunters arrived. They came individually at first. A Grenthian tracker with cybernetic enhancements, a pair of void monks with reality warping abilities, a human woman with eyes that had seen too much and hands that had killed more. Each located the pair. Each observed from a distance. Each, unexpectedly, withdrew without engaging. By the 10th day, larger groups had assembled. Ships of all classifications filled the station's docking bays, everything from single-pilot interceptors to small cruisers outfitted for combat. The station's population tripled as mercenaries, bounty hunters, assassins, and even several recognized heroes of recent galactic conflicts converged on Outpost X-17. Yet, inexplicably, no one made a move against Tim and Arya. "This is madness," Arya hissed as they passed a group of notorious killers in a corridor who simply nodded respectfully and stepped aside. "There are at least 50 elite hunters on this station. Why do they hesitate?" Tim shrugged, flipping to the next page of his comic. "Maybe they're waiting for someone." On the 14th day, as Tim and Arya enjoyed breakfast on the private balcony of their suite, a massive shadow fell across the station. The Loendarian flagship Violet Vengeance had arrived, its hull bristling with weapons powerful enough to reduce the entire station to cosmic dust. Tim glanced up at the ominous vessel, then returned to buttering his toast. Stylish entrance, very dramatic. Arya stared at him in disbelief. "Tim, that's the Imperial flagship, with enough firepower to make our morning infinitely more interesting?" He grinned, taking a bite of toast. "Relax. He won't fire on the station with you here." "You don't know Tarsus," she countered darkly. "His obsession has only grown over the years. If he can't have me, then nobody can?" Tim rolled his eyes. Extremely original villain motivation. The Caldwells faced that in issue 23, the possessive poltergeist of Proxima Prime. Before Arya could respond, their suite's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission, broadcast simultaneously to every device on the station. Tarsus's aristocratic face appeared, his expression a masterpiece of controlled rage. "Citizens of Outpost X-17 and honored guests, this is Regent Tarsus of the Loendarian Empire. I come seeking justice against the criminal Tim Lancaster, who has kidnapped our beloved Princess Arya through trickery and deception." Tim snorted. "Trickery? Pretty sure I just threw a bone." "A reward of 1 billion galactic credits awaits the individual or group who delivers Lancaster to me, alive preferably, but I will accept other conditions." Tarsus's eyes narrowed. "You have 1 standard hour to comply before my forces begin systematic searches. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." The transmission ended. Tim finished his toast calmly, then stood, stretching leisurely. "Well, guess the vacation's over." Arya jumped to her feet. "We must leave immediately. My ship can—" "Nope." Tim shook his head, collecting his comic and tucking it into his pocket. "What do you mean, nope?" Arya demanded. "I mean, I'm not running." He moved to the closet, rummaging through it until he located a small metallic case she hadn't noticed before. "I still haven't said proper goodbyes to Zulg and the gang. Besides, Tarsus wants a show? Let's give him one." "Are you insane?" Arya grabbed his arm. "There are hundreds of bounty hunters out there, plus Tarsus's entire royal guard. Even you can't fight them all." Tim turned to face her, and for the first time since they'd met, his expression contained no trace of humor or lazy indifference. Something ancient and dangerous flickered behind his eyes. "Who said anything about fighting?" He opened the case, revealing what appeared to be a simple metal bracelet. He slipped it onto his wrist, where it adjusted with a soft click. "Sometimes the best way to win is to change the game entirely." Arya started to respond when the building around them shuddered. Through the window, they could see bounty hunters, mercenaries, and Loendarian troops converging on their location from all directions. The final confrontation was inevitable now. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. And yet, inexplicably, Tim looked like a man without a care in the universe as he took Arya's hand and led her toward the door. "Ready to meet my admiring public?" he asked with a wink. As they stepped outside to face the assembled might of Tarsus's forces and the galaxy's deadliest individuals, the second act of their adventure came to its dramatic close, with a mystery man, a warrior princess, and a confrontation that would reshape the understanding of power throughout Sector 69. As Tim and Arya stepped through the doorway, the assembled crowd before them collectively held their breath. The morning sun glinted off countless weapons, energy blades, plasma rifles, and devices of destruction whose workings defied explanation. The galaxy's most formidable individuals had formed a perfect semicircle around the unassuming building, their postures rigid with anticipation. Arya shifted subtly, positioning herself half a step ahead of Tim. Her hands hovered near her energy blades, green eyes calculating odds, escape routes, vulnerabilities. The warrior princess, accustomed to facing impossible situations, prepared to defend the human who had somehow captured more than just her obligation. Tim, by contrast, appeared utterly unconcerned. He stretched lazily, the morning sunlight catching the simple metal bracelet on his wrist as he scratched the back of his neck. "Morning, folks," he called out cheerfully. "Lovely day for a standoff, isn't it?" The crowd's reaction was immediate and baffling. A visible shudder passed through the assemblage. Hardened killers, legendary warriors, and decorated veterans all flinched simultaneously. Eyes darted from Tim's face to his bracelet, then back again, expressions morphing from determination to confusion to something Arya had never expected to see on such faces: fear. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Weapons lowered incrementally. "What's happening?" Arya whispered, not taking her eyes off the potential threats. Before Tim could answer, the crowd parted. A gleaming shuttle bearing the royal insignia of the Loendarian Empire descended from the flagship overhead, settling on the makeshift plaza with theatrical precision. The ramp extended with a hydraulic hiss, and Tarsus emerged, flanked by elite guards. The regent had dressed for the occasion. His ceremonial armor gleamed with precious metals and embedded power crystals, a flowing cape of material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light trailing behind him. His aristocratic features were arranged in an expression of triumph, barely masking seething rage. "Princess Arya," he called, voice carrying across the silent plaza. "Your little adventure ends today. Return to your rightful place at my side, and perhaps I'll consider allowing your pet a quick death." Arya stepped fully in front of Tim, drawing her dual energy blades. The familiar hum as they activated provided her strange comfort. "I am bound by sacred law to the victor of combat. You know this, Tarsus." Tarsus laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Combat? This charade? We both know what really happened." He addressed the assembled hunters. 1 billion credits to whoever brings me the human's head." No one moved. Tarsus's confident smile faltered. "Have you all gone deaf? I said—" "We heard you," growled Cracks the disemboweler, his massive frame still motionless. "Then what are you waiting for?" Tarsus demanded, gesturing furiously at Tim. Every pair of eyes in the crowd flicked toward Tim's bracelet, then quickly away, as if looking directly at it was physically painful. Tim sighed dramatically and stepped forward, gently moving Arya aside. "They're waiting for me to give them permission," he explained casually, as if discussing the weather. "Which, to be clear, I'm not inclined to do." Tarsus's face contorted with fury. "Who do you think you are?" Something in the air changed. A subtle shift in pressure, a gathering of potential energy. The crowd, as one entity, dropped to their knees. Hardened killers, legendary heroes, and merciless bounty hunters bowed their heads in perfect unison. "Forgive us, Master," Krax rumbled, his voice uncharacteristically humble. "We did not recognize you." "Master Caldwell," whispered Dresda, the feared assassin, her eyes downcast. "Had we known—" Tarsus stood frozen, his mouth agape. "Caldwell? You're—" "Clint," Tim corrected with a wink. "Clint Master. Obviously a different name. I always use aliases when I'm vacationing. You idiots disrupted half the sector over a case of mistaken identity." He shook his head in mock disappointment. "So, who's going to kill me? Step right up, one at a time." No one moved, no one even breathed. "Master," Krax ventured, "please don't mock us." Arya stared at Tim, or Clint, with dawning comprehension. The bracelet, the casual confidence, the way he dispatched her elite guard without breaking a sweat. The holographic comics weren't just entertainment, they were family history. "You're—" she began, but was interrupted by a boisterous shout from the back of the crowd. "Clint, you son of a bitch! Where'd you disappear to?" The sea of kneeling warriors parted again, this time revealing a massive, barrel-chested humanoid with a cybernetic eye and more battle scars than unmarked skin. He wore the insignia of a 5-star galactic general, though his uniform was partially unbuttoned and stained with various colorful liquids. In one enormous hand he clutched a bottle of what appeared to be premium Jovian whiskey. General Thorgan Jed, the Hammer of Antares, hero of 17 interstellar conflicts and the most decorated military officer in 3 quadrants, staggered forward, clearly intoxicated. His booming voice shattered the reverent silence. "Ditched my birthday celebration to chase some tail, did ya? Classic Clint." He took another swig from his bottle, seemingly oblivious to the hundreds of deadly individuals kneeling around him. "What's this? Some kind of flash mob? Bunch of perverts in costumes? Let's get out of here." The general slapped Tim on the shoulder hard enough to stagger a normal human. Tim didn't budge. "Sorry about that, old friend," Tim replied with a grin. "Got a bit distracted." He gestured toward Arya. "Met a girl. She's with me now." Thorgan's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Arya, scanning her from head to toe. "Well, hot damn. Can't blame you there. Those are some impressive, combat credentials." He whistled appreciatively. "Still, you missed Zolg's 7th molting dance. Absolute riot. He shed right in the buffet." Tarsus, recovering from his shock, stepped forward. "I demand to know the meaning of this. Who are you really?" Tim turned, regarding the regent with the casual disinterest one might show an insect. "I'm the guy who's taking this lady home with me, and you're the guy who's going to jail for falsely claiming regency, attempted kidnapping, and—" He glanced at Arya. "What was that other thing?" "Attempted usurpation of the throne," Arya supplied, her eyes never leaving Tim's face, "and violation of sacred combat law." "Right, those two." Tim nodded to the assembled hunters. "Somebody want to take care of this for us? We've got a birthday party to finish." 12 different bounty hunters lunged forward, eager to please. Tarsus didn't even have time to scream before he was disarmed, restrained, and thoroughly incapacitated. "You can't do this!" Tarsus shrieked as he was dragged toward a detention vessel. "I am the regent. I demand—" "Save it for the High Matriarch," Arya called after him. "I'm sure my mother will be fascinated to hear how you declared yourself regent while she was on diplomatic retreat." As Tarsus disappeared into custody, the atmosphere shifted. The kneeling warriors rose uncertainly, maintaining a respectful distance. General Thorgan looked around, finally noticing the bizarre situation. "Wait, are these people afraid of you?" He burst into raucous laughter. "They should be. Remember that time on Zerathil Prime when you single-handedly— Thorgan, Tim interrupted with a warning glance. Let's save the war stories. Right, right. The general winked conspiratorially. Classified and all that. Tim turned to Arya, whose expression had transformed from confusion to wonder. So, he said with a sheepish smile, I might have understated my resume a bit. You're him, she whispered. The peacemaker, the shadow protector, the man who ended the quantum wars and negotiated the Andromedan Treaty. Tim shrugged modestly. I prefer the guy who fixes broken stuff on ships, but yeah, sometimes I do other things. General Thorgan snorted. Other things, he says. This magnificent bastard has saved the galaxy more times than I've been court-martialed, and that's saying something. You could have told me, Arya said, torn between awe and irritation. Tim took her hand, the artifact at his spine pulsing in response to her touch. Would you have believed me? Besides, it was nice to be just Tim for a while, not Clint Caldwell, legendary whatever. Wait, she said, eyes widening. Caldwell? Like the holographic comics? Distant relative, Tim replied with a wink. The story's got a bit exaggerated over the generations, although the bit about the artifact finding is pretty accurate. He tapped his spine meaningfully. General Thorgan threw a massive arm around both their shoulders. Enough of this public spectacle. I've got half a birthday celebration to finish, and now a romance to toast, to the nearest bar. As the odd trio made their way through the crowd, which parted with utmost deference, Tim glanced back at the assembled warriors, raising his voice just enough to carry. If I hear anyone's been causing trouble in this sector, I might have to cut my vacation short. Understood? The collective nod was immediate and sincere. From the Cosmic Archives, 5th millennium of the Galactic era. Among the tales that echo across the stars, none inspires greater wonder than the legend of the Violet Warrior and the Hidden Guardian. It is said that, in the age when the Loendarian Empire reached its zenith, a princess of unmatched beauty and ferocity ruled alongside her human consort, a man whose true nature was concealed beneath layers of carefully crafted ordinariness. Their union, born from combat and sealed by ancient magic, created a bond that transcended mere physical connection. The Hidden Guardian, known in whispers as the Last Caldwell, was keeper of artifacts with power to reshape reality itself. Yet he chose to walk among ordinary beings, lending his strength only when cosmic balance demanded intervention. His name alone could end conflicts before they began. His presence could bring warring systems to peaceful negotiation. The Violet Warrior, raised to conquer worlds through combat, instead learned to conquer hearts through compassion. Together, they established the Accord of Binding Unity, a covenant that outlawed forced servitude throughout the galaxy while honoring sacred bonds freely chosen. Their children, born with violet skin and eyes that reflected the wisdom of 10,000 years, inherited both the warrior's strength and the guardian's affinity for artifacts. They ventured to the furthest reaches of the void, establishing outposts of harmony where chaos once reigned. When cataclysm threatened the Andromeda confluence, it was their combined might that turned destruction aside. When the void trenches birthed horrors beyond comprehension, their united stand became the stuff of song and story. Yet for all their legendary deeds, survivors from that era speak most reverently of simpler moments, how the Hidden Guardian never lost his love for illustrated tales of adventure, how the Violet Warrior laughed more freely than any Loendarian before her, how their arguments could shake moons but their reconciliations could calm suns. Most cherished is the tale of their binding ceremony, where representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to celebrate. The Guardian arrived late, having stopped to assist a stranded vessel, still clutching a comic narrative in one hand and a wrench in the other. The warrior, resplendent in ceremonial armor that concealed weapons in every fold, abandoned protocol to run to him across the sacred hall. Their kiss, witnessed by diplomats and desperados alike, sealed not just a personal union but a cosmic one, proof that power need not corrupt, that strength could serve compassion, that love could transcend the boundaries of species and station. In the darkest reaches of space, when travelers face impossible odds, it is said they sometimes glimpse a converted cargo hauler with unique modifications, piloted by a figure reading illustrated stories while his violet-skinned partner plots their next adventure, guardians still watching over the galaxy they helped to shape, one random act of heroism at a time. Author's note: from the archives of the Cosmic Chronicler, discovered among the personal records of a narrative preserver within the Great Library of New Terra. As my quantum pen pauses over these final words of the legend of the Starlight Bond, I find myself thinking of you, yes, you, the voyager who has journeyed with Tim and Arya across the stars. Perhaps you sit in the glow of a holographic display on some distant outpost, or perhaps you listen to these tales through ancient audio transmissions while navigating the void between systems. In my years of chronicling the adventures that shape our vast universe, I've come to understand a profound truth. Stories are artifacts more powerful than any the Caldwells ever discovered. They bind us across impossible distances, transcend temporal barriers, and forge connections between souls who may never physically meet. This particular chronicle I dedicate to the loyal members of the Sci-Fantasy Network, those who subscribe to our transmissions, who leave thought impressions in the comment matrices, or who simply absorb these narratives in contemplative silence. Without your energy sustaining the network, these tales would dissipate into the cosmic background radiation, unheard and unfelt. I acknowledge that not every story I've transmitted has achieved perfect resonance. Some waveforms have been disrupted by my own limitations as a chronicler. But this story, this glimpse into the lives of a warrior princess and her seemingly ordinary guardian, I offer as tribute to each of you. For in truth, you are all my Clint Caldwell, my guiding constellation through the darkness of creation. Your presence illuminates the path toward narrative perfection. Each impression you leave shapes my trajectory, pushing me toward stories worthy of your attention. Perhaps someday, with your continued guidance, I will craft a chronicle that truly captures the magnificence of our shared cosmic journey. Until then, I thank you for joining me among the stars, where ordinary mechanics reveal themselves as legends, and violet warriors learn that true strength lies in vulnerability. May your own story be as surprising and magnificent as that of the Starlight Bond. Transmission ends.